Bienvenidos, Ushamdi, and welcome. CMIT 454, section 6380 and 6382 for the first 8-week term of the spring 2018 semester at the University of Maryland University College. This is the CCNA Security version 2.0 course, and this morning's video tutorial is going to be a supplement on the Cisco iOS IPS, or the intrusion prevention system, that we can actually enable right on a Cisco router. And again, think use case. Where would this be a phenomenal thing, idea to deploy? Would be like maybe a small branch, maybe a home office, small branch, medium-sized branch, where you don't really have a lot of room to put additional pieces of hardware. Maybe power concerns are part of that as well. But again, great for a small to medium-sized branch or small home office. So let's go ahead and dive in. We're actually going to walk through everything from cradle to grave here in terms of what you would really have to do. So I'm on a Cisco 1941 router here. There's the only configuration we have on the router right now, show IP interface brief, is that the gig 01 interface has been configured. Right, the IP 10001, and I actually have a PC, I shouldn't say a PC, an old MacBook that is directly connected into the gig 01 port. So if I was to ping that MacBook, and the reason I have that plugged in there is it's giving me connectivity to my TFTP server that runs on that Mac. Now, here is that same MacBook that we were just pinging. You can see the Mac is pinging the router. Right, directly connected in, so we've got some great round trip times here, and you can see I've got this ping running non-stop. So this is my TFTP server, and we're actually going to go ahead and set up that Signature 2004 sub-sig ID 0 for ICMP type 8 messages, and we're going to put it on this gig 01 interface once we get done. But here is what you would have to do. So I've got this router, and I want to deploy this router at my branch. Well, what do I need to do? Well, the first thing I need to do is I need to download the signature file. Now, in order to get that signature file, you're going to have an entitlement, which means some sort of support contract that allows you to download the software. Right, so on this link here that we saw previously, let me take a step back real quickly here. So this was the link here, and if you were to Google this, there's got this nice video data sheet here, and this gentleman does some really, really good tutorials. But Cisco iOS intrusion prevention system, some data sheets and literature, and then over here to the right, it says download software for this product. Because not only do we need the software, we're going to need the public key for Cisco's site. And I'm looking down here. I want to make this a little larger. Right, so here you go. You can see that we've got integrated router security, integrated switch security, integrated threat control, and so iOS IPS signatures for Cisco Configuration Professional, and then they've got the iOS intrusion prevention system feature software. So if I was to click on this for the Cisco Configuration Professional, it'll take me to that signature download page where I could then go ahead and download that software, right? So you click on that link, it's going to bring you here, or you're going to have to log in to get that information, and that's also where you would get the public key, and we'll get to that public key in just a second here. Let me scooch over. So here is the public key. Right, this is the Cisco key, pub key chain RSA. We need to have this, and we can just cut and paste it, but we have to have this on the router, or else you would end up with a wide variety of error messages, log messages that you're going to get that are going to tell you that you're not set up to run the signatures, that it's invalid. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's jump on the command line, and we're literally going to do what we did in the previous video, except we're going to follow this through with all of the intermediary steps. So what was the first thing that we had to do? We had to create a directory, right? So I'm going to get into global config, and I like using all caps for directories. So make dir, and actually don't need to be in global config, privilege exec. I'm going to say make dir, and we're going to call this the IPS dir. So that's what I'm going to name the directory, and you can see it creates that directory for me. If I say dir IPS dir to see what's in there, it's nothing. There's nothing in here, right? It's empty. But this is where all of the XML config files are going to end up with all of that signature information, right? And again, I showed you how to delete, rename. If you wanted to do that, you could certainly do that. So now we're going to configure that crypto key that we just saw. Now for this, I need to be in global config. So I type config T or configure terminal. And all I need to do here is grab the key, copy it, and then I'm going to paste it onto the router. And we will give it a second here. There we go. And that is it, right? So that is putting the key on there. The hardest thing to do is to make sure you have an entitlement to go get the key, right? But that's it. You go into global config and you put the key on the router. Okay, the next thing we're going to do, right, and this is what we did in the previous video, is we're going to go ahead and create an IPS rule. So we'll say IP IPS name, and we can use the same name. We'll just say iOS IPS in all lowercase. Now, remember, I could say list, right, if I wanted to scope or limit the scope of the traffic, but we don't care in this instance here, right? We could throw an ACL in there, but we're not too worried about that. So I'm going to create my rule. Now that is what I'm going to refer to when I go to place it on my gig 00 interface in the inbound direction. In the packet tracer activity, we did it in the outbound direction, and that's fine. But here, because of our setup, we're going to do it in the inbound direction. Now, I want to make sure I do a couple things with the IP IPS command, right? The first thing, and you can see we've got a few more options to pick from here. The next thing I'm going to do is the config location. This is the directory we created. Where are all of the config files? And I have already forgotten the name that we used. Was it IPS dir? All right, IPS dir. So IPS config location flash colon IPS dir. If I wanted to say IP IPS, and we can do where is it at here? Notify, right? I don't have a syslog server set up, but this is how we would do it. I would say log, right? And then if I did have a syslog server set up, then the traffic would go there. If I wanted to do the SDEE, right? So if I said IP IPS notify question mark, you can see the SDEE. It's a way to send the messages via HTTP or HTTPS. I'd have to flip that server on. So we put the log notification on there. What else did we do? Well, remember we had to set the time, right? What time does this thing think it is? So show clock. All right, so actually it's relatively close, right? Look, that may be spot on. And that is pretty close to the actual time. So we're good there. And then what else do we have to do? Well, remember we want service time, service, did I spell service wrong? SERVICE. Service timestamps log. Now we've got a lot of things we can choose from. So we want the date time. I want it local time. We'll do milliseconds, show time zone, get all the information in year, right? So we're going to get everything we possibly can. So I'll say logging, buffered, and we'll put 512,000 bytes, right? And if I had a host, I would say logging host, and we'll use the 192.168.1.50 from the previous activity. So that's where the messages would end up getting sent, again, if I had that set up. So, all right, now we're going to go ahead and we're going to configure the IPS. So again, we haven't put the package, there's a package file, and I'll show you what that looks like when we TFTP it. We still don't have the signature file installed yet. Right now, we're just doing all of our configuration work up front. So IP IPS signature category. So here's where we're going to go ahead and set things up. So remember, category all, we need to retire that immediately, right? We got to make sure we retire that, and then we'll simply use category, and I'll say iOS, and we'll go out on a limb here, and we'll use advanced, right? So we'll pull the advanced in, and I'll say retired false, right? Because I want to unretire. So we retire the category all, we unretire the category of signatures we're interested in using. I'll say exit, and remember we're going to get prompted here. Do you want to accept these changes? And I'm going to say absolutely I do. And then you can see applying category, and we'll give it a second here. Get the prompt back. So now it's as simple as going into the interface, right, and saying IP IPS, and I think we just get the name in here. Yeah. So then it's IP, and oh my goodness, I forgot. What do we call it? I can never keep these names straight. Before that, here, give me. Well, actually, let's do this. If I were to say, do show run include IPS. we're going to get the name iOS IPS. So we're going to say IP, I'm sorry, yeah, IP, IPS. I'm getting these names all mixed up in my head. iOS IPS, right? And then we want it in the inbound direction on this router. Now, again, let's confirm, right? Pings are working here, right? You can see we've still got the sequence numbers incrementing for these ICMPs. I say in, we come back over here. Now, take a look at that one right there. You can see that 198 milliseconds, boy, that jumped up significantly when I hit enter. Now take a look at what we get. The signature package is missing. So it's at this point that we want to go ahead and apply the signature package. Now, that was the TFTP comment that I referred to earlier. And this is to be expected, right? We haven't put that signature file here. So I went and downloaded on the MacBook there, I downloaded the most recent signature file. It's S1007, which is, I think, is as recent as like a week ago. So very, very recent. And you can see we still have connectivity. Everything's working just fine. So I can do all of this groundwork before we do the following. So over on that MacBook, which is connected to Gig 01, I have a TFTP server running. And I'm simply going to say copy TFTP colon, and oops, I don't want it to flash. Actually, I'll put the whole thing on here. Because typically I do copy TFTP colon space flash colon hit enter and then enter things in, but we'll do it all in one thing here. So we'll say copy TFTP colon / / 10.0.0.1 / and it's iOS -S1007 CLI.pkg. Now, this is what becomes important right here. Remember, we're loading an ID.conf configuration file, and this is typically where learners will get confused. It's not good enough to simply TFTP the file into Flash, right? That's not going to do what we need it to do. So I want you to watch what happens here when I say ID.conf and I hit enter. This is basically going to not only TFTP it, but it's also going to go ahead and prep the engine for us, build the engine up, get everything ready to go based off of what we've configured. Now, as you can see, this is going to take a few seconds. And so I'm actually going to pause the video and I will pull the video back once this is well on its way to configuring. And this will give us a good idea. So it's 11:35 right now. So say I kicked it off at 11:34. I'm going to pause right here at 11:35. Let's see how long. And failed to load the file. And let's see what happened. It timed out. And it should not have timed out. All right, let's take a look here and see where is my iOS. Did I do something wrong here? -S1007 CLI.pkg. It is definitely there. And it just failed to load it. So something isn't right here. So what I could do is we can TFTP it over here. This should have worked, and I'm surprised that that did not do what it was supposed to do. So let's do this. Let me TFTP it over. It takes about 60 seconds. So if I were to do copy TFTP colon flash colon and hit enter 10.0.0. Oh, I know what I did. Does anybody else see what I did? I just realized what I had done. As soon as I went to type in the name of the remote host, so let's just do this. We'll bail out of here. So here's my problem. I put the IP of the router in here, not the IP of the TFTP server. So fortuitous failure. There we go. I thought it was just trying to find its way and get the file. It clearly was not. So here we go. It's going to go ahead and pull everything in, and it's going to do everything for me in terms of the configuration. And it'll take about a minute for it to download the file, and then it's going to run through some build. So I'll pause here, 11:36, and once it wraps up, we will come back. So stand by. All right, so as we can see, it actually completed the building, right, of all of the different signatures that we're going to be in here. And it actually tells you how long it took. It took 33,000 milliseconds, right? So you can work that out on your own. It looked like it was about probably 10 minutes or so. Maybe a little less. All right, so here we are back on the router, and we now have the signatures running. So let's do some validation commands, right? I can say show run, and I think if I do section IPS, we'll get some information here. And you can see it shows us the configuration directory, the name of the iOS IPS rule that we've created, shows us the signature category, all retired true, and this is critical, right? Again, that's critical right there. And it shows us the iOS IPS Advanced category with all of its signatures is retired false. And then we have the iOS IPS in on the gig 00 interface. But let's pull this back up here and let's make sure that we still have connectivity. So just like the last activity, and actually there's a few about show IP, IPS, I'm thinking about these things as we go here. Show IP, I think it's interfaces. Yeah, so you can see the interfaces, and I love this command. This command is typically the command that is my go-to command when I'm checking things out to see, okay, what is the inbound rule? What is the outbound rule? What interface is it on? What's the name of the rule? And so this gives you a super, super nice little snippet here as to what we've got configured. I could say show IP IPS all, right? And again, this is going to be a little more verbose. Excuse me. Take a look at that. Active signatures, 558, and look at how many overall signatures are inactive. There's almost 8,000 inactive signatures. And this is why you go in and you retire the all category, because you are never going to get those 8,000 to, excuse me, to compile. If I was to say show IP IPS config is another one. It's very similar. Yeah, that's similar to that one. And then what is it? Show IP IPS. Let's do a quick question mark here. And what about, yeah, signatures. Okay, we'll do you got to spell it out. Signatures count, right? And so of those 592 that we were looking at, you can see it gives us the signature version, right? Micro engine, we see the different signatures that are involved here and how many total from each of these categories: FTP, state, string TCP, RPC, DNS, UDP, etc. And again, we see there's 8,510 total, 1,992 enabled. That's how many are retired and compiled. So again, so this is great, right? I'm glad we ran across this. So again, it brings us back to the retired, unretired, enabled, disabled. So 20 of the signatures are actually obsolete, but that's why we're seeing differences in these numbers here, right? So total compiled means how many did we unretire? Because remember, to be compiled, they need to be unretired. How many retired? So in other words, how many did we not compile in? Take a look at that, 7,952. And that's why it would crash the system if we were to try to compile everything in. Now, enabled. How many have been enabled? And that means how many have been compiled and are being used, right? Because remember, in order to be enabled, it must be compiled. Now, excuse me, we've got 1,992 signatures that are enabled. Again, signatures that have been compiled as part of the compilation process and are being used. All right, so now let's go ahead and do what we were going to do right before we went off on the validation tangent there. And we're going to do the same thing we did in the activity, which is we're going to drop ICMP echo requests, and we're inspecting the traffic inbound, so we're going to do that. So we'll say IP IPS signature, and this is going to be under, is it category? No, definition, sorry, signature, and I misspelled signature definition. Yeah, so under signature definition, I'm going to say signature 2004-0, and we're going to go to the status first, and that's where I'm going to say retired, false, enabled, true, right? Then we're going to go to the engine, and I can do that right from here. So we're going to go to the engine. I'm going to say event action, and we've got a few more event actions here, right? I'm going to say produce alert. I'm going to say event action, deny packet inline, whoops, sorry, deny packet inline. And I could say deny attacker inline, deny, reset TCP connection, but we're just going to deny the traffic inline. That's going to be good enough for us. And that is it. So let's exit out, and I'll exit out. When we get to the confirm, which should be here, do you want to accept these changes? So one last look. Yep, that MacBook is pinging away on that interface, and now I'm going to accept these changes, and we're going to drop back over here, and we're going to see what happens. And take a look at that, right? It's kind of cool to watch it as the signature is building, and now we're getting these log messages here, and look what happened. It was working great, and then boom. And let me do Control C there. Let's kill that. And we're going to want to roll back up here. So we went ahead and did the build, and as soon as we hit that and it completed, it took us about 8 seconds after I hit enter from the confirm for the signature to kick in. And take a look. Now it is blocking all of those ICMP, those what could be somebody trying to do a port scan against your system. So now let's go ahead and we'll build off of this. Let me kick the ping back off here. Actually we'll leave it where it is for right now. If I was to say, and let me show IPS, which one is it here? Statistics. Yeah, statistics. That's the one we want to see. So when we look at statistics, take a look. It shows you the signature that was being matched. It shows you how many packets were checked, alarmed, and then it shows me the drop rate. So let's make sure that that's what we are seeing. If I kick the ping back off, you can see that we're going to get these messages coming to the console. And in fact, let me do this. Actually, let me do Control C. Let me do no logging console. Hold on one second. No logging console. Whoops, sorry. Global config, no logging console. And that should fix that, I believe. Yeah. All right. So we killed, if you don't want to see the messages, you can say no logging console, because what we want to see is show IPS statistics. And that, see that number 42 there? Right, we should see that continue to go up. Yeah, every time we get a ping packet, it should go up. And then it shows us how many interfaces are configured for IPS. Just the one, right? But it's a great way to check and see. So what did we do in this activity? Well, let me stop this ping real quick here. As a quick review in this activity, what did we do? Well, we saw where we can go look at the signatures in the previous video. In this video, I took you to where you can download the latest and greatest signature file. We then talked about how to TFTP that file, making sure you use the right IP in the TFTP server field, and how to get that to basically build out what you've configured from an IP/IPS perspective on the router. It pulls it in, it builds it, and enables all of the engines for you that you've selected. Remember, always, always, always retire so that it does not compile in the all category. That is critical, or else it'll literally crash the router. We saw how we get the public realm RSA key in there. We did the build out of everything, and then we went ahead and did a modification just like we did in the previous activity where we denied ping, and it was great, right? We got to take a look at the statistics. We got to take a look at some other show IP/IPS commands to give us a little more in-depth knowledge, a little more concise information about what it is we're doing. All right, well, that wraps up the iOS IPS supplement. From here, we now are going to move into Layer 2 security. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I will talk to you guys soon.